All right, guys, Dr. Stamper here at PetWow. I hope you're doing well. I'm coming to you from a really sunny afternoon. The camera that I'm looking at that's behind you is beautiful, looking at some trees and branches. So it's a nice day. It's not all bad. It's a nice deviation from my day in, day out work here for a second. So today I want to talk to you about a question. How do I know my pet is overweight or underweight, and what problems can both of these cause? So, of course, I'm going to try to keep a brief answer because this could be a really long answer. And, of course, when you start adding in breeds and different breeds of dogs, different breeds of cats, that is a really, really difficult thing sometimes to answer definitively in a broad question. But as far as dogs go, because cats definitely get overweight. Dogs probably in general tend to be a little more like myself that way. One of the things I oftentimes tell people is it's more about the structure of the dog sometimes than the actual size of the dog, because again, certain breeds are just going to be bigger. Take an English bulldog, for instance. There are almost no normal sized English bulldogs. They're kind of just pretty much all overweight. Now, there'll be somebody watching this that actually has the dog and isn't. I apologize to you and to their dog. But again, most people who know pugs, English bulldogs, they're kind of born fat. They're kind of the way they are. So, but say take a dog like a Labrador Retriever, a common dog that most people know. And we've all seen really healthy Labrador Retrievers. Probably most everybody has seen kind of a pretty overweight Labrador Retriever. So I tell people generally when you're looking at dogs, it's not as much about the weight for me that the dog is as it is what they look like. So a lot of times I'll look at a dog from the top down as they're standing away from me, and I want to be able to reach down and feel their rib cage and be able to feel physically each rib, but not when I take my hands away. I don't want to be able to see each rib. That would be a dog that's too thin. If I look down at the dog and I can see, I can feel each rib. And then as I get to their waist, they kind of have a nice narrow waist. I can't see the rib cage itself, but they have a nice narrowed waist. That dog is probably in general going to be about the right weight. Now, of course, if they're maybe a little like me, they kind of do the chest and then they kind of go the rotund pear-shaped route. So, again, that's a really nuanced way, but that is a pretty common, way to look at dogs and say, hey, are you overweight? Again, that's a very generalization. Cats are a little easier sometimes. Sometimes male cats, for instance, especially if they're neutered, will kind of get a really big saggy belly. That's a hormonal change that oftentimes happens due to testosterone loss. So sometimes I'll have a cat that'll come in and they'll have this huge saggy belly, and yet they're actually not that really overweight, but they look it because they kind of sag, and it's hard to see, how overweight they are. But again, most cats are usually easier. You can kind of just tell that they're, riding heavy in the back end, generally. And of course, cats, unless they're like generally large breeds like Maine Coons can be 20 plus pounds and be normal. Most cats are going to run anywhere from the petite cat that's maybe 5 or 6 pounds to, 10 to 15 pounds. Generally, if we get over, 12, 13, 14, 15 pounds, they're probably on that borderline overweight. Now, again, there are some cats that are just structurally large cats. But cats are a little easier to see, and we can kind of class them by weight versus by look. And there's not as many breed variations and distinctions in cats. So, second part of this question was, what problems can both of those cause? Of course, arthritis issues are probably the number one issue, especially in our large breed dogs. To a lesser extent, smaller breed dogs. The larger breed dogs, they've got more weight. They're going to they're going to wear their cartilage out. They also tend to be highly, highly active. So when they are overweight, just the wear and tear on things, of course, probably one of the most common injuries, maybe the most common injury we see in orthopedics and veterinary medicine is cruciate ligaments, which is we all call it our ACL, which is in our knees, and their knees are much like our knees, and structurally ACL tears are very, very common. So we have to do a lot of surgery on dogs, and sometimes they're not overweight. That happens as a sports injury sometimes. So, but obesity, certainly, just like people, you might hear the term metabolic syndrome, which is overweight, can cause, of course, in people more heart issues probably than in dogs, but things like diabetes, thyroid disease, just lifestyle changes like that, liver, hormonal changes are very common that dogs get obese. So, and quality of life, just, they can't get around as much. They can't move as much. They can't meet and greet you at the door. Not that we don't have medications to help with arthritis and to help them move, but it's just, everybody knows when you lose weight, you generally feel better. Dogs are much the same way. So, But orthopedic issues in dogs for sure. Cats, kind of the same way with metabolic. They tend to develop diabetes, kidney disease, liver disease. Some of those things are not related. Some of them are related to weight changes. So as they get older, certainly hormonal changes, and again, quality of life. Cats definitely get arthritis too, just like dogs. It's sometimes a little more nuanced and not as pronounced, but definitely a real thing as they get into their geriatric years. So that's a really brief overview. There's a lot of, you could probably ask 10 different vets this question and you'd probably get 10 different answers and they're probably all right. So that's just a quick response to that. So I hope this finds you well. Sorry, this one's a little bit longer than usual, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. See you next time. Bye.